Back on the show, Anwar Richardson from Orange Bloods, one of our favorites. And now you're no longer a cousin. You're in a family. You're in a family because Texas is.
No, I get to sit at the big table now.
Yeah.
I get to sit at the big table at Thanksgiving because we've been at the little people table over at the Big 12. And I'll tell you what, we haven't got a real good portion of food. So now I need to know what the adults discuss over here.
Yeah. So what is the better feeling that you're getting from the fan base? Is it the playoff run? Or is it life in the SEC? Because both, both you could argue have got to be just your fans over the moon right now at Orange Bloods.
Yeah, the Longhorn Nation is very excited about what's going on. I think right now the thing that's got the most excited about is the playoff. More so than anything else. I think they understood in order to get to the playoffs, they had to win the Big 12 championship. And let's be honest, like going into the season, winning the Big 12 title, that was kind of the hope anyway. So, and it's always the expectation, even though it's never met. But it's always been the expectation. And so, but to be able to be in the playoffs, to no longer be the punching bag for the joke of Texas is back, like we're back, like they can at least feel like, okay, you can't make fun of them anymore. Like they actually are back and not only just back and making it in the playoffs, but a team that's got a good chance to win it all. That I can make an argument for Texas versus Washington. It's very easy for me to make an argument for Texas versus Bama because it already happened. I can make a very easy argument for Texas versus Michigan. So, when I look at it and the Texas fans look at it, they look at it and saying like they are very close. And by the way, 2 potential home games because Texas being in New Orleans, that's the South. That's going to be in their backyard. If they're able to make it to Houston, well, hello, that's a home game for them. That's in their backyard as well. So I think there's just a lot of excitement of what could be, kind of going from the shaky parts of certain portions of the season to how they've looked over the past 2 games, which has been very dominant, to a team that, once they get healthy and they play a Washington team that they beat last year in the Alamo Bowl. So it'll be a repeat for them, thinking to themselves, they beat Washington last year. They're playing really well this year. They beat Bama already. Like Texas fans are feeling pretty good right now.
Yeah, and speaking of ending the season in Houston, that was the goal in College Station. And how about it, Anwar? They finished the season in Houston too. Do you realize that?
Yeah, things didn't go the way that they expected. Things didn't go the way they expected at A&M. There was a whole lot of hype, a lot of substance as relates to Jimbo Fisher, and that thing did not taking off. And there is, for the petty portion of a Texas fan, this has been great, right? So they've had A&M, who's been talking about, the SEC and all, and Texas isn't this and this and that, to basically explode and implode at that point. Not only does Texas get to go to the Big 12 championship game, but Oklahoma gets to sit at home and they don't get to partake in that kind of thing. And then, by the way, on the way out, Texas fans got to mock Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner, by chanting SEC in order on the way. Like there's just, my mom always said, make your words sweet just in case you have to eat them. And there's a lot of people who are trying to find some things with their words. Like they're putting some hot sauce on their words. They're trying to put some vinegar on their words, maybe a little bit of sugar on their words. Something as they try to eat these words that they have been spitting out all year long or prior to the season. That's from a Texas standpoint, feeling pretty good. But yeah, when they look at the folks at College Station, they don't feel any pity. There's no sorrow at that point. There is a little bit of a laugh as they continue to ride on with Matthew McConaughey to New Orleans.
Yeah. Do you think that Texas needs to win at least one playoff game to be viewed as back, as they like to say, or as nationally elite? Or do you feel like they've earned that by winning the Big 12, coming to the SEC, and just beating the brakes off Alabama in Tuscaloosa and making the playoff? Do you feel like they're already there?
I would say it. I think Texas is playing. I would say playing with house money at this point. This was I think that the line going into the season was maybe 8.5 wins or something to that effect. I forget what that number looked like. or maybe it's 9.5, but nonetheless, Texas has exceeded everybody's expectations, to be with sitting where they are, only one loss to Oklahoma. That says a lot about them in this program. There's been that steady build from the 5 wins from Steve Sarkisian to 8 the previous year to this season. Be able to have that win against Alabama to again close out with the Big 12 championship and get to the playoffs. They're one of 4 teams at this point, and even if they somehow lose against Washington, I don't look at that thing as, oh my gosh, this would be a disappointment. I'm still going to say this is still in a season that not a lot of people expected Texas to be in. Definitely not after the OU loss, for sure. And Texas is getting back to the point of relevancy. And it's funny, you were on my show earlier today. You had asked me, question about like what this kind of means for Texas, and I started thinking about it a little bit more after the show. This Texas being relevant, especially in the realm of recruiting, is going to help. Now, when you think about this, so let's do the math on this one, Mike. We're old, okay? So let's start with by the preface of saying you and I are old, okay? Because we remember when Nebraska was relevant, right? Under Tommy Frazier. Like, we remember those days. We remember seeing Coach Osborne, right? You and I remember the U. We remember Miami when they were a powerhouse for several years, right? And so we remember Texas. And so you remember Colt McCoy, and you remember them getting there to that game against Alabama, and you remember Colt getting hurt, right? Well, that was in 2009. That was 14 years ago. That means that simple math, an 18-year-old recruit, part of the 2024 class, was 4 years old. A 17-year-old recruit was 3 years old, and you go down the line, right? And so there's a generation of recruits who haven't seen Texas being relevant. Vince Young, we remember that epic game in the Rose Bowl, right? We've seen it. It's etched in our memory forever. 2005, how amazing that season was. That was 18 years ago. That means today's recruit wasn't born. His dad didn't give that smooth line when he saw her at the mall or the bar or the club or the church or anything like that in order to, to get his future woman, right? So this, for Texas being back to relevancy for a generation of people who have never seen Texas be relevant. They've heard about it. This is a generation that's seen Georgia be relevant. This is a generation that's seen Alabama be relevant, Clemson relevant prior to this season. They don't know Texas as being a kind of a powerhouse program the way you and I know it as kind of an older people. So that, to me, is the win. To me, is to have a generation right now that's like, oh, Texas is good. And they're not talking about the past. That's the good thing about Texas. And when this whole thing in the new merger concern, and they don't have the LHN network anymore. The LHN network, I used to call it, is the History Channel, because it's all about all the things that happened in the past, like all the games of yesteryear, Texas versus Colorado, the SPAC, and all this other kind of stuff. It's the History Channel, and nothing relevant to today's generations that they can grab a hold to, And so that's why I say that's the win for Texas. That the win for Texas is getting relevant. Anything that happens past that, for me, is a bonus.
Yeah, you did make me feel old with that Vince Young 18 years ago. I didn't realize that. Man, so time flies. But Quinn Ewers could be the next Vince Young, at least in Longhorn fans' mind. If he can do what very few thought would be possible and win the national championship, and I think it's right there for the taking on what I think they're going to beat Washington. I think Alabama's going to beat Michigan. I certainly think that. So we get to a national championship, and it's Alabama and it's Texas. We've seen it once before. Texas dominated them. I think the final score was just 10 points, but really probably should have been 17-20. What's your confidence level that if it is Alabama and Texas, that Texas can do the unthinkable and beat Alabama twice in one season?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And, the thing is that Steve Sarkisian got the formula when he was there. Steve Sarkisian understood when he got to Texas, the formula is we got to get better on the offensive line. We got to be better on the defensive line. We can't win with what we got. We got guys who are small, and that's okay for that conference that we're in right now, but it's not going to be okay. Since Sark understood, what he said was, they thought, okay, we got to build, because when he took the job, he didn't know that they're going to go in the SEC at the time. But he said they've got to build so once they get out of the Big 12 and face an SEC school, that they'll actually be able to compete. It just so happens that during his time and during his tenure, that happens. But they were already within the building process. So when we watched that game with Texas versus Alabama earlier this year, the key to the secret sauce of everything was that Texas was winning on the line of scrimmage, both lines of scrimmage, the offensive line of scrimmage, the defensive line of scrimmage. Texas has got two interior guys, Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy. Those guys are bona fide. Those guys are very good on the defensive tackle front. And because they also have some guys on the Ethan Burke and Barron Sorrells on the outside, they know how to win up front. And then you got an offensive line that is so good and knows how to protect. I mean, there's a reason why Quinn Ewers in that game completed 24 of 38 passes for 349 yards and 3 touchdowns in Tuscaloosa. As you said, the 34-24 game that happened. And there was videos that you saw that emerged after that. You saw Texas players just bullying Alabama players, just throwing them around and tossing them around. And we've never really seen that. We've seen Alabama lose. We haven't seen them get bullied, you know? And so my confidence level of it will be, this will be a Texas team that knows that they did it once, will be able to look at the film and say, we contained Milroe, you know, as best as anyone else did. We were able to win on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They have skill position players with Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell. They've got a tight end who's considered to be the second best tight end in the country. You know, Brock Bowers, I mean, there's an argument to be made that Jatavian Sanders is the best tight end in the country just because of Brock Bowers being injured, you know, because Brock Bowers' injury is concerned. Texas lost Jonathan Brooks, the starting running back for the season, but they've had a freshman from Orlando, Florida, CJ Baxter, come in and be very effective. They've had Jaden Blue come in and be very effective as well. So we know that Sark likes to throw the ball deep. We know he likes to attack. We know he's going to go for it on fourth downs. You know, he's going to be very aggressive, and he's got a defense that, you know, oh, by the way, Mike, was the number one defense in the nation as far as third down percentages are concerned. No one got off the field better than Texas this season as relates to third down defense. And so I feel pretty good about Texas's chances. I don't necessarily think that they'll go in and do a 10-pointer like the way they did last time, but I feel that the confidence is growing, the belief is growing, and I think that if Texas has the opportunity to beat Bama, I think they'll be able to take advantage of it. Again, not an easy contest by any stretch of the imagination, but it's hard for me to look at a team that beat a team by 10 points in their house and say to myself, well, now you're automatically the underdog.
Mm-hmm. What's the latest on Quinn Ewers and his decision to potentially return next season? Is that finalized, or could this playoff run, you think, dictate that? Would NIL dictate that? Would want another season with Steve Sarkisian and his outstanding track record of developing quarterbacks? Is that all in the equation here?
Yeah, I think what you said, the last portion of it is probably the bingo portion of it, which is another year of development. You've got to think a guy like Quinn Ewers hasn't had a chance to really grow and develop as much as he should. This is a guy who skips his senior year of high school, you know, and then, you know, decides to enroll early at Ohio State. He's on there for a short period of time. He comes here to Texas. He plays last year. And then, of course, he plays this year. But there's still not a ton of starts that are on his resume. I think that there's a portion that if he did go to the NFL, he has not shown the ability to stay healthy for an entire season. And I think that becomes important when you want to show NFL teams like the one thing you can't get wrong in the NFL. And I covered the NFL for years. I covered the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I covered the Detroit Lions. I covered the NFL when I worked at Yahoo. If you want to get fired as a GM, go ahead and get your first round quarterback pick wrong. Get that thing wrong, and you will lose your job. Like this, you want to guarantee. Like, we all know how we can go lose our jobs, right? We've all thought about how we could go out in a blaze of glory, right? That's how you go out in a blaze of glory, right? Is by that kind of thing. And so, I think another year of being healthy because he was hurt last year. He's been playing through an injury this year. Another year under Sarkisian, where you don't have as much quarterbacks that are, out there right now, because you've got a lot of guys who are going to come out and be in that competition. Another year in the SEC to do it there as well. And if he has that same kind of productivity that we think he'll be able to, now you're talking about maybe the number 1 overall pick if everything goes well, maybe top 5 pick, as opposed to right now, maybe talking late first, second round. And, if you start thinking second round, I always give a margin of error of, now you start thinking about third or fourth, those kind of things happen. So there is a thought process that's staying would make a lot of sense for him. And that if he stays another year on the start, continues to grow, continues to develop, he's going to have an offensive line that's going to be really good, that's going to protect him. Kelvin Banks, the left tackle has been starting since his freshman year. That's a future first round pick. They've got tons of guys on that line. So the thought process is right now is stay and come back. Now, that being said, crazy things can happen, who knows? Because if he goes and looks crazy and does an amazing performance against Washington and does an amazing performance against Alabama, and all of a sudden people are saying like, hey, we really think this makes all the sense in the world. Hey, all bets are off, right? There was a point in time where Cardale Jones was considered to be a first round pick. And then after the injuries occurred at Ohio State, he decided to come back for another year. But anything can happen if a team gets hot and wins a national title. But right now, I think that the thought process it would be, if I had to guess, he comes back. Malik Murphy has to consider once he wants to go to the portal or not. And then, of course, there's Arch Manning in the mix. But the last thing on that one is I think the portal closes on January the 2nd, if I'm correct. And so this becomes a problem, and a good problem. But, there's guys who may think like, hey, I want to go in the portal. I may want to jump in, but I'm also competing for a national title right now. Now may not be the time. Like I might just need to get my ring and then reevaluate in the spring. And in the spring, then anything can happen.
Yeah. And I think I could be mistaken. They change all this so much, it's kind of hard to keep up. But I believe they've added an amendment to where if your season goes beyond that January 2nd deadline, whenever it is, like it would be January 8th if they made the national championship, mm-hmm. I think there's a 5-day window after your season ends that you can go into the portal. So I may have that wrong, but I think that's a new thing they just put in. But I really wanted to ask you about next year because, man, I know we're excited about the playoff, but I'm really excited about a new era of the SEC with Texas and Oklahoma coming in here. Mm-hmm. And, Texas, you won't have to be on 11 o'clock anymore for these big time nationally it's going to be 7, 8 o'clock. It's going to be night games. That's going to be a thing of glory for your audience.
What is that? What is that?
But I'll be honest with you. I always looked at Texas as, that team or the program that just, they talked a big game, never lived up to it. Mm-hmm. But they wowed me incredibly 2 years ago when they hosted Alabama, number 1 Alabama, and just the scene with the fans, and even that I think was like an 11 a.m. kickoff. But
it was pretty early.
we're done with those. But
we do a lot of day drinking out here in Austin before the games.
I was blown away by just the fans and the atmosphere. I have to imagine it's going to be like that several times next year when an SEC team comes into Austin. What's your thoughts on that?
It's going to be electric. There's no need to act like, that's just going to be like, no, are you going to get excited about Georgia coming to your house or Kansas coming into your house, right? You're going to get excited, about playing, a Kentucky or a Florida, or you're going to get excited about playing Texas Tech, or K-State. Like there's no excitement level like that. And the thing is that, and this is where the Texas administrators understood. And one of the reasons that they scheduled tougher games and tougher opponents, especially after A&M left, was it was hard to get their fan base excited about the games. You're trying to sell a season ticket package, and you're packaging like, you got K-State this year, you got Kansas this year, we got West Virginia this year, and like everyone's like, eh. But now for sure, like, okay, the SEC is happening. There's going to be excitement. By the way, Texas travels well. So they're one of these programs that when Texas is coming to your town, they will take over your town. AKA, if you got an Airbnb, you might as well go ahead and jack up the rates because Texas fans are going to be needing a place to go. They travel like Steelers fans, so they come hard, they come prepared. There will be, a lot of private jets at your airports, but they'll come. They're going to come, and there is an excitement, about it. There's excitement about playing in the SEC. It's excitement about playing in meaningful games, and excitement about playing in a meaningful conference. But I think the biggest excitement comes, Mike, is that they're walking into a conference not feeling like they're just a part of a conference. They're walking into a conference that feeling like they can compete in this conference. I think, A&M outside of year one was just a member of the SEC conference. This Texas feels like they'll be built. Everything's been about building towards being able to compete in the SEC week in and week out. So not just a member. They don't just have to put the badge on their chest. They're not like A&M, which celebrated everybody else's victories as if it was their own. Like A&M hung SEC banners and SEC wins. They acted like when somebody else won, that was their victory. Texas fans didn't want, and administrations, that's not what they wanted. They wanted to be specifically, hey, we're coming in and we're having success here. So I think that's part of the excitement level. The Big 12 days are gone. They were able to go out on it with a bang. Again, I'm sure your Mark did not want to have to hand over that trophy to Texas or anything to that effect. It's so funny because there's a scene in there where Steve Sarkisian is trying to quiet the crowd because they're like yelling and they're booing and this and that. And they got quiet for about like 5 or 6 seconds, and they kind of realized like, nah, this is our time. Boom, boom. And then whenever we just started talking, they just started chanting the SEC. So again, not because of the excitement of the SEC, it's just to be petty. But yeah, I think Texas fans are super excited. And look, and the last thing I'll say on that portion of it is when we do media days, when we do that thing, or even go to spring meetings or media days, it won't be like, hey, what's it's like? The conversation will be like, hey, what about competing? It will be about the playoffs. It'll be about building about the playoffs. It'll be about, Nick Saban and all those kind of things. And, Texas comes in you won't come in just as so happy to be here. So they're going to be like, hey, we're here to actually go win and compete. And I think that's going to be part of the excitement. And I'll be happy that I'll be covering games where I just won't be looking at Texas just getting drummed in this conference. That would be kind of discouraging as well.
Yeah, I hear a lot of A&M talk from you. Is that the number one game you think on the schedule next year, or is there a different one? Is that, I realize the Oklahoma series is a big rivalry, but could A&M surpass it perhaps with Texas?
I mean, it's going to be a huge game just because they haven't played in a long time. And it'll be probably towards the end of the season. And so that Texas should be fighting for some sort of playoff positioning with a 12-team playoff. So I think that'll be a huge game. But I think here's the beauty of now being in the SEC. It's going to be a lot of good games. There's going to be a lot of good games for Texas. Like before, I'll be honest with you, there was one. It was Oklahoma. That's it. That was it. Everything else was just a game, just something to do on a Saturday, nothing to get excited about. It's like, Texas is playing West Virginia this weekend. Oh, all right. Like 11 o'clock it is, right? I'll be home by about, 5:30, 6 o'clock and check out the rest of it. But Georgia's going to be a big game. That's going to be huge to face that Georgia team. Of course, OU is big for that rivalry aspect. I know you'll be there in Dallas. And A&M, obviously, that's going to be a big game. But I think all these games, honestly, Mike, are going to be big because they're going to be a first for Texas. Kentucky will be big. Going to Nashville and going to Vanderbilt. That's going to be big as well. I think something crazy. I think if I'm correct, doesn't Vanderbilt have a winning record against Texas? Some obscure stat like that. So it's an obscure stat, but it's something to that effect. So I think all those things will be relevant all the first that are happening, all the going to certain stadiums, the different atmospheres, knowing what certain things are like. So I think the all will be big. That's the great. I think the beauty of it. It won't just be they get to face the A&M again. That'll be a part of it, and that'll be towards the end. But there'll be a lot of great games to look forward to.
All right, last question for you. What's the best barbecue in Austin?
I will never answer that question. I'll answer that off air. Let me tell you, I'm not getting myself in that kind of trouble. I'm not having anybody email me or text me. There's too many people that people get really sensitive about their barbecue here. You say one person, and then I'm gonna have 15 other people coming at me like that. That's like asking you like, what's your favorite kid? Like I'm not gonna. Okay, that's one of those things. In private, I'll tell you like. I like but in public, I'm just gonna tell you, get here early. I'm telling you, when you you come out here, get here on a Thursday, get here early, go ahead and try the different spots. There will be no shortage of eating places, drinking places. We got beautiful lakes. Go rent a boat, go out on Lake Travis, enjoy yourself, especially if you're here early in the year. So there's a lot of good places. There's a lot of good places, but I'm not going to play that game. You gave me trouble.
Hey, I really appreciate your time, Anwar. Before you go, can you tell the audience how can they follow you? How can they find your work?
Listen, it's real simple. It's Anwar Richardson. It's my first and last name. I'm on Twitter. If you want to follow me, I'm not one of the, kind of homerish kind of people. So I do play fun. I do like to play devil's advocate. So I do like to mess with people. But when I have a show, and I do it every day on our YouTube channel, OB Live, and I do it from 8 to 11. I'm a reporter who also does a show. I do a lot of things, unfortunately. I do everything but go to sleep, apparently. But I won't be one of these people that you look at and you absolutely want to hate. So like Billy, who by the way is a good friend of mine. I like Billy Lucci. Shout out to Billy Lucci as well. But Anwar Richardson is how you can find me on social media, and then you can also follow me at my work on Orange Bloods Live. And then if you just want to get on my show, I have an open chat throughout my show. It's from 8 to 11 a.m. Central. It's called the Old Fashioned Show because the old fashioned is my favorite drink, and it's also a play off of the just having an old fashioned kind of good time, and I go to many different directions. So you ever get bored one morning, come on and watch them. We're all family, black, white, I don't care, country, ghetto, we all family. Come on in, let's sit down and we'll have a good time.
Hey, I didn't realize the old fashioned is your favorite. That's my favorite too. So
what's your favorite bourbon like you like?
I usually go with Buffalo Trace is kind of my go-to.
I usually do I've done a bullet rye typically is what I like. I like the rye brands. But there's so many different variations. There's a Japanese old fashioned. I don't know if you've ever had that.
No, I've had a Mexican version.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I've never had the Mexican version, but I've had a Japanese version. I've also had like a banana old fashioned as well. Smoked old fashioned is clearly, if you get that one good. But you know what's crazy, Mike? I'm flabbergasted at how many bartenders struggle to make a good old fashioned. Like, if you're an old fashioned guy like me, it's unless you go to like a specialty place. Just asking the average person to do it, it's just like once I realized you can't do it, I'm like, hey, just give me like vodka and like orange juice. Like just stay within your comfort zone, because anything apparent out of that you can't do.
Yeah. Hey, I really appreciate it. One more thing. Will you be coming up for the Vanderbilt game?
Oh yeah, I go to every home and away game.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're more than welcome to. I have a studio. It's right next to the stadium. Anytime someone comes through Nashville, I try to get them to come in there and do like a long form video podcast. And we've had Paul Feinbaum in there, big people like that. We'd love to get you in there.
I mean, Yes, I would love to follow in the steps of a Paul Feinbaum, by the way. Wait, by the way, when are you going to hook me up with Paul? When are you going to have me get on Paul's show? It's a Texas thing. Having Texas people on. Kurt Bowles doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He needs to have someone who's a little bit more younger and hipper and has a mustache that I've been growing out for the month of Movember. I actually grew it out for Movember for suicide awareness.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we were able actually on my show. I normally don't sport a mustache, but we do that for the month of November, Men's Health Awareness Month, and go out and get your colonoscopies, guys. We don't go to the doctors enough, right? So, but mental health awareness and of course suicide prevention. And I had linked up with a charity there, and so was able to. It was Vibrant Emotional Health, and so we're linking up with them, and of course 988, which is a suicide hotline. So especially around the holiday times, if people if you have thoughts of suicide or you have family members that you feel like, friends that may have it, they actually have trained crisis counselors who can talk to you, whether it's you need your own advice or you need some advice on others. 988 is the place to call. And so through that month of November, was able to raise $5,000 to donate towards them to go towards suicide prevention. So that's why I have this mustache on. But yeah, just want to make sure I put that out there because it is holiday season. A lot of people are going through some things. And then a lot of people who deal with thoughts of suicide don't have people that they can talk to, don't have people they can turn to. They deal with it internally. They smile on the outside, they hurt on the inside. So if you are one of those people, but you're looking for someone that you wanted to maybe turn to, don't make a permanent decision off a temporary situation. Reach out to 988. They have people who you can talk to and get you to help in the city that you live in, so you can go and live a full life and a thriving life as well.
Send me a link. I'll put it in all the show notes and everything so people can check that out.
I will, absolutely, not a problem, Mike. But I look forward to coming to Nashville.